This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Hey guys, I'm Si. It's Sunday, it's fight night here on A.C.E Podcast Nation. Welcome to the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 103. The huge show tonight. We've got so much to talk about. Joined by another top guest from the world of combat sports. We'll, of course, have Ben Doughty on a bit later to talk about boxing. We got the UFC from last night and some interesting boxing stories. Plus, we're forcing Ben to preview Tommy Fury versus Jake Paul, which is going to be fun. And as usual, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you prefer your podcasts in audio form, then you can check us out on the Sports Social Podcast Network. You can download them on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. Every show produced by A.C.E Podcast Nation, available at the Sports Social Podcast Network. But joining me, as ever, is the former Cage Warriors champion, UK MMA legend, Mr. Daniel Batten. How goes it, my friend?
Yeah, all good, Si. Feeling good. Looking forward to this one.
Yes,
let's
indeed,
get it rocking and rolling.
Yes, indeed, mate. And after the just little conversation I just had with our guest before we started, it's going to be a very interesting conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. But a man with some stuff to get off his chest. He is a former Cage Warriors light heavyweight champion himself, most recently seen in the UFC. He is the Baltic Gladiator, Mr. Modestas Bukauskas. How are you, mate?
Yes, doing good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on once again. It's always a pleasure talking you to you too.
Yeah, I appreciate it, mate. It's, like I say, it's been a while, but not too long. I'd like to keep you in, get you on. You're nice and semi-regular, my friend. But look, it is what it is. The obvious place to start is your last fight and the serious injury which you sustained in that. And I've got like a couple of general questions because someone sent in a question to me and said, ask Mo if he thinks oblique kicks should be banned. And this is a kind of thing which kind of rears his head like every now and again when one of those types of kicks kind of makes contact with someone and it looks really nasty, whether it does damage or not. Obviously, it looked incredibly nasty for you. Obviously, you've had surgery since as well. What do you think about that question, first of all?
Completely legal. It's my job to defend it, and I didn't. Simple as that. I mean, I obviously stated that on Twitter also. Like, you know, a lot of people were giving him a lot of grief because, you know, this oblique kick should be banned and this and that. At the end of the day, it's my job to defend. Or he timed it well. Listen, the first one he threw, I got out of the way. So he didn't even land that first shot. The second one, he did it as I jabbed. So well done. Perfect timing. Great job. Like, you know, it's a dangerous kick, but you know, as I mentioned earlier, sort of off the broadcast, you know, perhaps had I not been injured previously, maybe I could have took that kick. Who knows? Maybe it was that more devastating because of that. But, you know, obviously there's certain decisions you've got to make as a fighter. And, you know, I obviously chose to still continue and take that fight. And, Yeah, I mean, look, it was a perfectly timed shot, and when your punches aren't landing, you gotta work, you gotta do something else. And then he started, trying to go to the legs, because then my shots started landing and his were missing. So, and yeah, so perfect game plan. Well done to him. I have no issues with that kick. I think it's quite funny. You see a lot of people now starting to throw that kick a lot more often in the UFC, just because they saw how devastating it can be. But it was just all about timing. You know what I mean? Like I said, I went for a jab, heavy on that front foot, and then he caught me. So fair play to him.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like a bit of a circle. Like you'll see one or couple of those kicks land in like the space of a few weeks. They do look particularly nasty, even if they don't cause an injury as serious as what you had. But then they'll kind of disappear for a little bit, and then they'll come back. They seem to just come back and around, and then you have the same sort of questions and conversations come in. But you mentioned there, like you were struggling with your knee before the fight. How did you injure it initially?
Well, it's actually an injury that I've been underlyingly dealing with since before my Cage Warriors title defense. So it's something that had actually, sort of got worse, and I had no idea. Obviously, one thing that my doctors told me was that my leg muscles in my leg have become so well developed that it was essentially holding everything in place. So I had no issues because of my athleticism. But yeah, about 10 weeks out from the fight, I had a pretty serious injury, which caused me a lot of problems. And obviously I said nothing. I continued doing what I was doing. I tried to work around it, but it meant that I had less tools available to me. And obviously you can't expect to go into a fight with less tools and sort of think, oh, do you know what, even with this I can still win, when you realize like you can become a bit more hesitant. You can not do things a certain way. Now, obviously, I'm not putting everything on this injury, because Khalil fought a very good fight, and he stuck to his game plan. He done really well. So, like I said, all credit to him on the win. I take nothing away, but yeah, it was something that I had to deal with, and it was a choice of it's a massive opportunity, and obviously sometimes you just want to, especially fighting the UFC, you want to get in there again. You want to prove yourself. You want to show what you're made of, and this and that. And with such a big opportunity in front of you, how could you want to turn it down? But in hindsight, maybe it would have been better to not take that fight and wait a little bit later, and potentially have that thing fixed. And then, I could have potentially made it to actually being able to fight in London in March. So, obviously the event having to move to Las Vegas last minute, but obviously that was another big thing for me. You know what I mean? Like, getting to fight in front of my hometown and stuff like that, and then that all changed and blah blah blah. And so yeah, there was a load of things that the whole trip, honestly, and the whole everything just when you look back at it, like it couldn't have gone any worse.
I suppose it's one of those, isn't it? Like with hindsight, you focus in on the injury beforehand, the move in, and you kind of look back at it as like this, like you say, like this kind of everything went wrong. But equally, if you'd gone in there and you'd sparked him out in 30 seconds,
exactly,
it would have been like, what a great trip, etc. So hindsight is wonderful, of course it is. But like I said to you, knees. I know a thing or two about surgeries on the body, and like knees they're so complex, and there's so many different aspects and ligaments and things which can cause issues. And once you get an issue with one, until it's fixed, if you kind of try and, or should I say often, when you try and sort of rehab it rather than the surgical route, which, so many people do because they want to avoid surgery. Of course they do. I'm just talking day-to-day people as well, not even fighters. It can weaken or do not further damage, but like it can make you more susceptible to picking up other injuries, other swelling, things like that. It's nasty, mate. Like, what about the recovery since? So you had the surgery after the fight. What was the full surgery that you had?
Yeah, so I don't want to go into it, because what I've also learned is that I've mentioned certain things in the past, and it's come to bite me in the arse afterwards, because apparently Khalil mentioned in an interview. I mean, I may, reveal it later because, as I said, right now, in terms of the strength of my knee, it couldn't be any stronger. So, in terms of what they did, I had the best surgeons, which again, I'm very thankful for the UFC because for them to help so much with their athletes, they covered everything. I'm massively grateful for that. So, had it not been for them, I wouldn't have had the surgery done so quickly and with such good doctors either. But my physio, she was actually present during the operation to see what they had done, so she could obviously try and schedule my rehab appropriately, and which I thought was an amazing thing of her to do. But she said, honestly, it was the most invasive knee surgery she's ever seen in her life. The amount of poles and things and wires and she said that as soon as they put the camera on the inside of the knee, it looked like a forest of candy floss. There was all sorts of crap flying around, and so there was a lot to clean up, and they did so much all in one go. But they got the best materials. They had, usually on certain things they only use a graft from your own body, but they used a graft from an external source to help fix certain things. So even a chronic injury that I had, that just because of the way I kick and stuff like that, I had something in there. They managed to make it even so realistically, even the checkups I've had post-op, everything seems very strong, but I have obviously hit a bit of a roadblock because it seems like I have some sort of cyst in my knee. So obviously, like I said, there's so much crap that was done to it, so much, invasive stuff with all the materials and stuff that they used, that unfortunately a lot of scar tissue can build up, and obviously that scar tissue has nowhere to go. So it's caused like a little bump in my knee. So that's sort of hindered my recovery over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I guess you could say. But thank God for the UFC and stuff like that. It will get sorted quickly. So that particular problem will get fixed. It's just it's quite demoralizing when everything's going so great, and obviously you're on your YouTube, you're on your Instagram, and everything's positive, but then no one sees all the dark shit that goes on behind the scenes. And then that this is now one thing that I'm just gonna you just have to deal with, and there's nothing you can do about it. You have to wait. You get the MRI. You wait a couple of days, then they'll give you the results. But like I said, we already sort of know what it could potentially be, but then you just need to double check. And then, but then once that's done, I get that whole cyst situation sorted. I should be back on the proper road to recovery, because my knee actually feels great. Everything in it mechanically feels good, but this little situation is what's causing such a massive problem for me right now. It almost feels like, until this gets sorted, I can't further my recovery. So at the end of the day, it's something I just got to deal with. I know it will get better. But on the whole, my knee will probably be, from what the doctors tell me and how they felt on mechanically, it's going to be 3 times stronger than it was pre 2019. So all good.
Indeed, mate. I mean, it's got to be difficult, not just physically with the recovery, but like you mentioned, there's going to be, I know myself, and I'm sure Danny knows, when you have a surgery or a serious injury, when you're doing the recovery, there's days where it's very, very difficult, and it is dark times, and it is difficult. And if you have a setback and things like that, that only adds to it, and you've got to be very mentally tough to be able to deal with those ups and downs. You mentioned the UFC kind of, helping with the medical, the medical side of things and stuff like that. Gaz on YouTube, he said, did you feel let down by the UFC releasing you whilst you were injured and recovering?
No, not at all. I feel like a business decision had to be made, and that was probably the right one to make. Because funny enough, as Danny actually told me previously, the UFC doesn't really care. At the end of the day, you've got to perform. So you've only got 4 fights on your contract. Choose wisely. You know, like I think the Jimmy Crute fight was a bit too early for me. Although I felt, you know, on top of the world, and I definitely have the skill set and stuff like that. Maybe it wasn't the right fight to take so early on because that already caused me a loss. And then even the Oleg Shashuk fight, which would have been a bounce back, that was another sort of, you know, that guy's quite a veteran. And I mean, if you see what he done to that Russian guy in his last fight, he's very experienced. That, do you know what's mad though? That I went 3 rounds with him and got quite tired, obviously, even being on the back foot. That guy that he fought got tired after halfway through the first round. So clearly that guy's very good. So even taking that fight was a very, and then the last fight on the contract, out of all the fighters to have, you know, obviously a very motivated, hungry Khalil Roundtree, you know. So I've had 4 very tough fights. So yes, I would have liked to have one more chance, but at the end of the day, you only got one chance and you got to make the most of it. So again, when you're motivated and you know you have the skill set, but it's one thing having the skill set, it's another thing being able to apply the skill set in the cage. So there's those I still now to this day believe I have all the skill sets to be a world champion, but like I said, I just need to be able to construct everything a bit more or organize things a lot better in order to be able to show it out there. So yeah, I feel like the UFC, you know, for this moment in time probably did the right thing, because now I can go out into another, you know, I can get fully, and again, they didn't even know how long this recovery was going to take. Like, you know, from what it seemed like, you know, everything, it was going to be such a long road before I got back. So who knows when I would have got back into the cage? Why keep a guy under contract that's, you know, potentially going to be out for such a very long time that we don't even know about? We don't know how bad the injury was. So, yeah, but it gives me a chance now to go out and again, learn to apply that skill set. I've done my learning in the UFC. You can't do your learning in the UFC. That's where you got to perform. So, I've still, you know, like now I've learnt my lessons. Now it's time to like really in these outside promotions, go and put that skill set out there. Because when I come back next time, it's, you know, that's when you really got to turn it on. You got to turn it. You can't have a, you know, like I say, an extended period of time trying to feel your way in. You got to be ready to go straight away. So, but look, these are things that you learn. Lessons in life, lessons in fighting. And if I could obviously give any sort of gems or piece of advice to anyone else, such as Kevin Lee, who just recently got cut, he said the same thing. Cherry pick your fights. You know, don't go in there, you know, crazy, all guns blazing. And, you know, because at the end of the day, it's sometimes, it's like I said, it's not due to a lack of skill set. It's due to maybe experience and, you know, even just aggression and ways of fighting and stuff like that. There's so many other all these different factors that go into it that other fighters have more experience with. And, you know, you don't want to be fighting the ones with loads of that particular experience, because otherwise it's gonna show. So, like I say, Danny was one of the first people to tell me that, and obviously, that's why, you know, Danny's one of the best coaches in the UK, and like I say, in Europe. So
the best.
Yeah.
The
best. Sorry, Danny, that's the best.
Just before I'm going to ask Danny some stuff now, but just before we bring Danny in, Craig asked, what other training can you do sort of while you're injured and you're recovering, or is it just a chance to kind of fully recharge your batteries while you wait to see what's happening with this cyst?
I'm always super motivated. You know me, I can't just sit there on my arse and do nothing. I've got to do something. I've got to find, you know, it teaches to adapt to the situation. So luckily I have, you know, a former Soviet Union no-holds-barred champion living just across the room from me. So, you know, obviously he's always coming up with intricate ideas on how to further progress myself as an athlete, even whilst I'm, you know, incapacitated. I'm not able to do certain things. So I'm lucky I have my dad, because, you know, not to say that I wouldn't be able to figure stuff out myself, but everything he's thinking of is specific to fighting. So even stuff that we're doing for sitting down is all specific to when I come back, not just pumping weights. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to look like a bodybuilder where we're doing stuff that's all specific to fighting, which is great. So although, yeah, I can't really do much, and especially until I get this particular situation sorted. But once I get this situation sorted, I should be doing training up on my feet. So it's just a case of waiting, and it's frustrating, but you got to make do with what you got.
100%, mates. So I think I've grilled you enough for a little bit. We'll see what Danny's got to add. But like Danny, obviously you've been involved with Mo various points in his training and stuff like that. Like, what do you make of like everything which Mo's just said there about his injury and how he looks back on his time in the UFC and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly difficult situation that is, in obviously, he reached one part of his major dream, which was to be in the UFC. But obviously, to complete that dream, he wanted to be UFC champion. It didn't happen for numerous reasons. Some of them he touched on. I think, he was correct. And it's nice to hear him, kind of agree with what I was saying regards the order in which he picked those fights. Jimmy Crute was not a good fight to take. But you've got to understand from this, young lad's perspective, he had a fast run through Cage Warriors to world champion. And this guy believed he could take on Superman and win. And that's a great attribute to have. But it's also really, really hard attribute for a coach to deal with a student that has that kind of now belief in himself. There's still an order of levels that you progress up in UFC. It's kind of like, I think it was Ryan Hall when I trained with him. He was explaining that when you get to black belt in BJJ, there's like an unsaid belt. So when you get to black belt, you're a white belt again in the rankings of black belts. And then you get a blue belt black belt and a purple belt black belt and so on. And he put himself at the time when he was describing this as a purple belt black belt level. And it's the same with UFC, really. You kind of start again and you relearn to apply this skill set and tactics and strategy, which strategy and tactics becomes hugely important. The people have kind of perfected their individual techniques for their striking, their takedowns, their submissions, and so on and so forth. It's all about applying them in the right order against the right opponent. I also want to just cover as well, about these oblique kicks. Look, at the end of the day, there's submissions that could be put on as well, arm bars where you can have people choose not to tap out and have their arm snapped. The sport is potentially brutal, but so show jumping. If you do any kind of research into show jumping, which is kind of a posh sport, if you will, there's loads of young kids having their necks broken that you don't hear about because it's kept out of the public eye. But sports can be brutal, and we're in the sport of combat sport, so of course there's a brutal side to it. But it's conducted as safely as possible. But there are always potential consequences in training or in the fight itself. There is so much that we could talk, and it would take more than a podcast to discuss my perspective and Modestas' perspective. And let's include Gintis in that because he's a massive influence in Modestas' life. It would take more than just one podcast to put out all of our opinions and how we feel that it should have gone, how it should go from now, and so on and so forth. But I made it very, very clear the direction of how I would have liked to have seen Modestas go regards to picking his fights, the way I think he should have perhaps added new things to his skill set defensively so he could get off more of his attacks. And it just wasn't to be, unfortunately. I think a lot of it was also along with the difficulty of having that he so believed in himself and trying to hold him back from taking a bigger fight than he was ready for, was the fact that he was still learning on the job. But this was still someone still learning the craft of defending the takedown and countering the takedown, which is beginning to pull off in the training sessions. And I'd say to him, it won't be long before you'll be getting the takedowns of your own. And also with the grappling as well, still improving his skill set there. We never got to see really his grappling because his defensive aspects of his wrestling got so good. We actually never see him get taken down in UFC, which I hold myself proud for because predominantly, I do though, in all honesty, and I'm proud of him for, because you teach a kid to ride a bike, but once he's doing it, it's up to him how he wants to ride it at the end of the day. I taught him the best way to anti-wrestle. And at the end of the day, he went in there and performed it well. And he got better and better and better at it. We saw that progress in Cage Warriors. which led to fatigue of his opponents, for which he ended up getting these emphatic wins in Cage Warriors. And of course, the first fight in UFC was all because of his defensive positions that he was then countering with strikes or potential takedowns of his own right that led to a knockout in his first fight in UFC. So I was really proud of what he'd done, and it really worked on what we was working on. And I like to think that it gave him belief in what we was doing. But I don't want to get too personal with the discussions that me and Modestas have, because we have had to have some heart-to-hearts. But I will always stick by them. I think there was an issue with the angle of his knee, with his stance, because he likes his spinning kicks. And they're great attribute, but people know these spinning kicks are coming, and they will prepare for them and try to either invade his space, like the Polish guy. I'm terrible with names. The Polish guy was really, really good. He pressed in so close, he didn't allow Modestas to get off his longer range kicks. And then, of course, you had someone like Roundtree, who was actually targeting the first step of the device needed to perhaps activate those spinning long range kicks in that it's an angled knee. But, I had some really interesting conversation with Gintas. I mean, Gintas comes from an older style of cage fighting or no holds barred, as it practically was for him. But he's so modern in his approach. He really tries to modernize his ideas. And we had some really interesting conversations about Modestas. And I think some of the things that I tried to put over to Gintas was that he was sometimes confused by the decisions in the fight that Modestas was making, because Gintas is a different type of character, different type of fighter. He's the kind of person who will throw down and let come what may. It's like a game of chicken for him. If you're driving at him at 70 miles an hour, he'll drive at you at 80, but he ain't steering out the way. And I tried to explain to him, I said, look, Modestas is not the same as you. He's not he can't do that. So, but one thing he is an incredible athlete. And what we have to do is we have to get him to simulate that toughness by just having better defense. And I think if Modestas can crack the defensive aspects to therefore become a counter-attacker as well as an attacker and have layers to his striking, I think he could be an unstoppable force. But that's just my take on it. Like I say, Modestas will have his view on his progression. Gintas will have his view on that progression. But I always feel that that's how you'll see him have huge increments of success, because he's so close to being a complete puzzle. So close. But when it's like a piano to me. If you got a piano, one key's out of tune, the music's always going to sound shit. You've got to make all the keys work in unison, and to play the music under pressure when you've got a big audience, which is UFC, that's a challenge in itself. But having a key that don't sound in tune, it's always going to be a difficult proposition to continue to succeed at the height of UFC. But it's not out of his grasp. I know his passion, and I know how smart he can be, but I think sometimes he gets lost in his tenacity and believing in himself, and sometimes got a little lost with that. But look, the advantage you have, Modestas, is that you're young and maturing with your life's lessons and your career lessons. And in your weight division, you're actually exceptionally young. So you will bounce back from this. You are going to have another crack at the whip more than one time after this. If you fail again, I think you've got enough length in your career to find the right way of getting back to the top. I mean, I don't know whether I'm babbling on here because I'm kind of like spilling my emotions out.
I didn't expect this. We're 28 minutes in, and I could listen to you two talking. Like I'm just glued to it.
And it is a little bit of a heart to heart almost. But one thing I am always is try to be honest. And I've always said, Modestas, I'm always wrong, but I always try to find the most right way. And I think as long as I'm always admitting that I'm always wrong, I'll always try to find a better way. And I just want you to take on that mindset and find the right way to add to your skill set, add to therefore your tactics and strategies to get back online. But first things first, look, we've got to get you over this injury. You've got this cyst issue, which sounds like quite a small issue in the big scheme of things. It just stops you obviously getting back to actual martial art training where you can add to your skill sets that we've been talking about. But I'm sure once you get this done, it's going to be really exciting to see what you can do. I presume you're going to head back Cage Warriors way. I don't know. Have you had any thoughts of where you're going to direct your career?
Probably not, actually.
Okay.
I've had a conversation with my manager, and there's a couple of options. And I mean, look, we could potentially go to America to promotion to fight. That's, you know, linked very closely to getting people again into the UFC with the right fights and stuff like that. There's other potentials like within Europe. So it's just a case of, obviously, when that time comes, we'll have those sort of conversations. But the good thing is, my manager, who's, you know, Jordan's under the same management as well.
That's right. Yeah.
He's always looking out for sort of our best interests all around the board. So, you know, in terms of financially, in terms of, you know, getting you back to where you want to be and stuff like that. Because, you know, there were conversations about, you know, like, oh, what is the next? And you know, my manager says, like, look, obviously the UFC is the goal, so let's get you back there. So we're going to do whatever it takes to sort of get back in there. Which obviously, like all the other promotions, are absolutely amazing. Also, like, you've got to look at the athletes and, you know, things like PFL, Bellator, and this and that. But I think that'll be a sort of decision that'll be made maybe later on down the line. But as of right now, obviously, we're looking to get back to the UFC. But I think we're probably going to go somewhere a little bit more international as opposed to just in Cage Warriors. But again, if so happens that maybe that is, these are conversations that will happen when I'm a bit more recovered. So at the minute, when honest to God, once I get this cyst issue fixed, I reckon I'll be like up on my feet and probably boxing already. So this is why I say, like, the recovery for me is going to be good, because my body's actually been responding really well. It's just this thing that the problem that I've been having is I've not been able to get full extension, and I've been thinking, well, why the hell? Like, even the doctor was like, surely you should have full extension by now, but I can see, like, there's a problem here. So I get my MRI results back tomorrow. Most likely he'll say that this is, you know, we're going to need to sort this out, and then from there the recovery can almost continue again, because right now it's at a bit of a standstill. Once it gets fixed, we're back on track. So there's options though. So
100%,
and like I say, even my dad said the same thing. You're done now in terms of learning. Like, you're going to learn so many other things, like, of course, but in terms of like you were saying about being a bit smarter about certain decisions and stuff like that, we're going to take those things a lot more into consideration. And, you know, sometimes you only learn by making the mistake, right? So, you know, we've made the mistake,
100%.
we've had the problem. So now we understand what we need to do going forward and how we're going to pursue things going forward. Sometimes you also look at other, and I've said this before, you look at other athletes and stuff like that, and you think, oh, well, they're doing this and they're doing that. And it's, at the end of the day, it's your own personal journey. You can't look at anyone else's. You've got to focus on yourself, and that is all you can really ask for. So I know that when I come back, not only will I be a lot more mature, but I think putting my skill sets together is going to be a big focal point, because, like I said, it's not due to a lack of skill set. It's due to a lack of being able to enforce all those things out in the cage on the night. Like, you know what I mean? You can be great in training, you can do all these things, but you've got to have, you know, you've got to have everything right to be able to put it out there on the night, you know. So that's what we're gonna work to do whenever obviously I'm able to get back training. So
amazing stuff. Gaz says, would you consider the UFC Contenders series as a potential option?
So that would be an option, obviously dependent on, there's so many different factors that people don't really get to see. It's not straightforward. Oh yeah, like you go fight here and then you win a couple fights in here. Like, things could happen at any point, especially with just coming out of the UFC. I mean, you know, me being quite young, obviously I can quickly, maybe 1 or 2 fights already get back in, but then there'll be a case of, it could be a last minute pullout and you make a decision. I can take it or I can wait. And then Contender Series could be there's, like I said, the options are completely endless. It depends on where our head's at in terms of our preparation and how we're feeling and you know, and stuff like that. And I'm definitely not going to go into a fight injured again. That's for sure. Yeah. I want to make sure I'm 100% and stuff like that. So yeah, if I finish a fight and then there's a last minute call up and it's a good matchup, then we'll take it. But if not, you've got to be smart about these things. Sometimes the longer run is better than the short term satisfaction. You know what I mean? You've got to look at the bigger picture sometimes. So Contender Series would definitely be an option. You know, let's say I'll go on a win streak, and nothing's happening, then of course Contender Series is right there, and that's your job interview. But let's say I go on a win streak and they sign me, then great. So yeah, that's definitely an option also.
Good stuff. Donna Perry says, you look familiar, Modestas, and I recognize the name. Have you been on Big Brother or some other reality TV show? Sorry, it's not a fighting
Here
question.
we go. Well,
I know the answer to this.
Yeah.
I think it was Pornhub, Donna. It was Pornhub.
Yeah. Biggest cock in the UK, wasn't it? Something like that.
What? That can't be possible. You know that's not possible. Remember when we crossed paths in the shower? Have you forgot that day?
We've had many sword fights in the past.
Mine was the sword, yours was the dagger.
So Take Me Out was the show that I was on, so it wasn't Big Brother, but obviously, you know, it was a fun experience. Obviously, we talked about it in the past. Got my little bit of time in the spotlight, showing my horrendous dance moves to the world. So and it's cool because, like I said, that was one of the first early steps that sort of brought my confidence within myself out there, because it's something that I'd never had confidence in myself, not only like, you know, just as a person in general. Like I never had confidence in myself to do something as crazy as that. So that was another thing that definitely, I think, was a massive positive in my life, a positive influence in my life, because it's made me who I am today. Like even now, like in a gym working floor, like, you know, a new person comes in, I'd always be a bit shy, like, oh, I don't want to say hi to this person. Like, you know, you'd be a bit, but now I can just go straight up to them, like, hey, how you doing? Like this and that, you know, like there's so many different experiences in life. And that was a massive, Take Me Out was a positive experience in terms of my growth and development as a person, like in terms of my own confidence and belief in myself, just to be who I am and not really care about what people think. So yeah, there you go.
It must be difficult, Danny, being 6'4", good looking, you know, confidence.
Are you talking about my manhood again? Or?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I'm only playing. No, it's good. And I think like the fact that you can take positive like outlook from anything in it, like regardless of what it is, if you can get something positive out of it, then that's good. And I think the fact that it helped you gain a bit of confidence and kind of move on, and you look back at it fondly, I think that's good. Donna wants to know, do you still keep in touch with the girl?
No. Not at all.
That went well.
It was funny because as soon as the show ended, it's like I think she already had a bit of a problem with me being 4 years younger than her. I don't know, maybe she thought I was a bit immature or something, but like, I don't know. Like at the end of the day, I think it's oh yeah, we do a show. It's like, you know, a bit of a cool situation. It's like a bit of a hot, like, you know, like you have a little meet up on a holiday and then it's like done. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Without getting too sidetracked into reality TV shows, because I don't actually know what Take Me Out was or what it entailed, but what's the general gist of it? So
essentially, one geezer comes down this love lift. So Paddy McGuinness is the host, and then there's 30 girls. You know, at the beginning they sort of, they have these lights and there's different rounds, and then they turn off their light if they don't want to go on a date with you, and they keep the light on if they do want to go on a date with you. And at the end, if you've got a couple girls left or whatever, then you choose between the last two, and then the last one you go off to Tenerife for pretty much like a 3-day holiday. Nice. Well, two-day holiday. It was over very quickly, but you know.
Basically, it's the same as this other program that was called The Undateables. It's just where everyone can't get
It sounds like a modernized version of Blind Date.
Yeah,
we'll go with that one instead. Yeah.
No, look, at the end of the day, like, it is what it is, isn't it? You were young, you got something out of it, and I think that's what you should take from it. Most of all, do you find it difficult while you're out injured to watch MMA, or does it not bother you?
I'm not going to lie to you. It's been a bit difficult watching the UFC because obviously now not being with the promotion, it's a lot harder to watch, because at one stage you're watching it knowing, I'm going to get a fight soon, or I'm going to be there soon. And now it's like, I've got to work my way to get back up there. And you see, like, even watching other fights in the light heavyweight division, even thinking like, oh, that would have been a great matchup and this and that. And now you that's going to be a bit of an unknown until I get back there again. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's always difficult to watch when, certain things haven't gone your way career-wise, but it also at the same time gives me motivation because I know the skill sets that I possess. So it gives me motivation to obviously want to get back there, but at the same time it's still a little bit painful because you're not there just yet, or you've been there and now you're out. So that's the hard thing to watch about it. But aside from that, obviously I do enjoy watching the fights still. I did enjoy watching the fights last night. But yeah, it does give me a massive glimmer of hope as well, because I know I can compete with these guys. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah, and I think when you kind of put it out on social media that you had been released or you'd left the UFC or whatever, like I sent you a message and I said, like, I've got no doubt that you'll be back there again. And I meant that completely. Like, of all like the people who've been released even recently, I look at you and I look at your attitude towards it. I look at the way you talk about it. You talk about your lessons learned. I look at just your general skill set. And as a fan, and as someone I'd like to think like we're mates, like I think
No,
I believe that you would be back there, and I've got no kind of doubt about that. Whether it's in 18 months or a couple of years, I've got no doubt that you'll be back there. And when you go back there, you'll kind of show the real Modestas. Because, and that's like, I don't want to kind of talk about like negative stuff with you all constantly, because I don't want to feel like I don't want you to go away from the show thinking, oh, all I've done is kind of talk about like negative stuff.
Not at all.
But like your first fight, obviously, or that you had that knockout where the guy's falling out of the cage, like that was very memorable and a bit of a statement. And it was like, right, let's go. And then obviously things didn't develop onwards, perhaps as we were hoping. But like, is that your fondest? Is like that initial victory the fondest, your fondest memory there, or is it like the general experience of kind of?
I'd say
there's Island.
Well, I think we had, myself, Danny, my dad, Denison. We had an extremely amazing time out in Abu Dhabi. Even when we took Lucas and we went to Vegas, these were all extremely memorable trips. I'd say, we got to, bond as friends, as athletes, as, everything. Like, we got close on a very personal level, and I'm very grateful for that, because that will obviously continue forward as we go on in life. And it was good to have those experiences. You're able to share that with people. I was very grateful that I was able to share, that we were all able to share those experiences together, and we're able to go and have it through the ups and downs. Do you know what I mean? It's going to, like I say, all these things are going to make for one hell of a massive comeback story, as it always is with the case with my career. I feel like it's almost history repeating itself. Like, I had to learn a couple of lessons, stepping up a level, went out and, went on a massive win streak. And now, again, I've had to step up in level, had to learn my lessons. Now I feel like it's almost the same thing's going to happen, because you just mature, do you know what I mean? But yeah, so, I mean, in the UFC, obviously the debut was great. That was obviously a massive moment for me, able to, support my family. And do you know what's mad? Because I want to be able to support everyone who's sort of helped bring me up, Danny included. It's just unfortunate I've not been able to do what I need to do in order to be able to make that happen. But sometimes as well, you just got to sort of trust the process. I know those things are they're gonna happen further on down the line. Unfortunately, it just sort of wasn't my time just yet. Oh, another memorable thing I have to admit, like, you might think it's a bit weird, but when the way people perceived me after the Jimmy Crute fight was, he's all hype. There's no backing towards it. And then I had the Oleg Shachuk fight where, that guy's an absolute killer, and I went 3 rounds with him, and I had him rocked in the first and the second round. And, in the third round, even being, quite badly tired and, you know, taking a couple of big shots, you know, I was still firing it back at him. That was one of my better sort of, I guess you could say, maybe strategically certain things could, like I said, could have been done better, but it was a fight where it seemed to have earned a lot of people's respect, like, especially the commentary booth, because when I went to go and do interviews prior to the Khalil fight, there was a lot of positivity being talked around. So that was quite a big moment for me, because I knew after the Crute fight, I felt like I'd let a lot of people down, let myself down. And even then, you know, in terms of like popularity and stuff like that, like, you know, people were talking so great about you, and the next thing you know, like I say, hearing people sort of doubt you a little bit, like, it obviously gives you the bit, the extra fire. So it's quite nice. It was a nice thing in my career to hear guys like Cormier and John Anik and, you know, Michael Bisping give me praise, you know. So, you know, obviously now we're back in a sort of similar position where, you know, I've not shown up, but I'm looking forward to be able to get those same sort of reactions in the future. But that was quite a turning point, I think, in my career to be recognized, because my whole life, I don't feel like I've really had much of that recognition just as a person. So it's nice to sort of have that. I guess it goes down from like sort of you know, like, I was never a popular kid and stuff like that. So to hear those things against guys that are very credible was, again, another big moment for me to have that backing by those people. Yeah, like it's weird, because now I feel like from those experiences, I don't have any problems with myself as a person anymore. Like maybe previously I maybe had some confidence or, you know, issues or confidence or people thinking about what people thought about me. Now I don't really, you know, it doesn't really bother me too much. And I think that's such a massive lesson to learn in life. And I'm very thankful for that. And, you know, even with the lessons in the UFC, that was another big thing that came with it. So yeah, just all around, it's been it's been a great thing. The whole experience was great, but I know obviously the result was not the great thing, but I know the second time round that we do it, not only will we have the amazing experiences of the whole situation of being in the UFC, having limos with your name on it and stuff like that, we'll also get the wins this time. And then that will make for even more credible memories for sure.
100%, mate. And I think something you mentioned there, which kind of struck a chord with me particularly, is when you get to the point, and I think a little bit of it comes with like maturity and growing up and getting a bit older and stuff, is kind of stopping worrying what other people think of you is very, very freeing, because it can be debilitating. Like, and I would imagine even more so for someone like yourself who's in the public eye, you know, as well. But like, even for someone like myself or anyone else, like, if you, as particularly when you're like early 20s, teenage, you spend so much time kind of thinking about what other people think of you. It can be quite debilitating, and it can be like, I look back sometimes and I think, Jesus Christ, I wasted so much time worrying about what people said about me. I wonder what I could have done with that time. Now, I'm not saying that you did that, by the way. I'm just saying that it's a kind of freeing thing, and I think everyone kind of gets to a point where they're like, do you know what? This is me. I'm who I am, and if you don't like it,
yeah. And like I said, that gives you a sense of freedom, just spiritually, emotionally, with everything. You're just enjoying being around people that enjoy you, and, you know, people that don't enjoy you, well, you don't have to spend time with them. Do you know what I mean? So, trust me, if I can say the amount of lessons that I've learned within the last year, it's insurmountable. Like, very thankful. It's also difficult to have to learn some lessons. It's painful, but at the same time, I'm grateful. So, like I said, going forward, I know that the future will be a lot brighter, because, I mean, I haven't even mentioned like all the crap that we had to go through with even getting my dad to the US for the Las Vegas. Like, this whole trip just seemed to was just cursed from beginning to end. But I mean, like, his COVID test came back unclear. He had to wait a day later and then go to America on his own. Then the UFC didn't pick him up straight away, and then he had to get a taxi. Didn't have the address. Then he had to. You can imagine my dad. Do you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? And I'm like, and obviously it's obviously late there, and then I went to sleep because I had a training session that day, and then having a call. Trying to call my manager, and then didn't get through to him. Then he finally got there, and then he ended up having a hypothermic reaction a day before the weigh-ins, and then on the weigh-ins he wasn't there with me. Like, there's just on the way back all this COVID app stuff. We had to come back a day later, so it was just an absolute fiasco. Like this whole thing. Like I say, we're learning a lot of lessons. There's a lot of crazy times, but I know, like I said, for all these massive dips that go down, there's always the peaks that go up. So I know those are coming. It's just a case of just getting through all these monstrosities, if you will.
It sounds like quite a stressful time, mate, at the end of the day. But ultimately, like you say, I think in amongst, there's negatives there for sure, but in amongst that, you've mentioned several kind of positives that you've picked up along the way. And I think if you focus on those positives, you focus on the lessons you've learned with your mentality, you'll take that forward. Danny, before I play the one-word game with Modestas, have you got anything you want to add, mate?
Just think of it this way, Modestas, because if you feel that that's the place you belong, which I think we all believe that's the place you belong, I'm talking about UFC here. Yes, it could be a number of fights away, even a handful of fights away. But in your young years, that's not an issue at all. But what you've got to think is the second time around, think about how untouchable you felt that you was this first time around. And it didn't play out the way you was, because I think you were overly confident, overly believing in what it was all about. And, you learnt your lessons from that. The second time around, imagine how much more solid an individual you're going to be. And I think you shouldn't worry about what's now happened in the past. I think you should just be focused on what's going to happen for the future. Mm-hmm. You now know that you should try to take the easiest fights you can get offered in UFC. And so if you get your 4-fight contract, and to me, always in UFC, always the contract that really matters is the second one. What I'm trying to get over, not only are you going to be better equipped, if you do this next 4-fight contract that one day you will have again, if you do it right, that second one you'll get will be the one that will change your life financially, not the first one. The first one is nothing more than trying to show that, well, I do belong here, in the easiest route you can. And it's kind of like doing what some fighters have done throughout much of their careers, but you kind of want to, fatten out your record with just some wins. Doesn't matter what they are, who they're against, just get the wins. And ultimately, that's against the easiest opponents you can be. You want to fight those Jimmy Crutes and these high-level guys for high-level money, for hundreds of thousands of pounds. You don't want to be fighting them for 10,000. You want to fight them for 10 times that amount. Mm-hmm. And that's all I can say, really. Good things are becoming. You're young, and you sound like already you're so much more mature than you was in your way of thinking before. I think you was almost blindly youthful and tenacious in a way that it stopped you knowing how to get the objective of what you was wanting. You was almost rushing too much.
100%.
But the second time around, I think you'll take your time more. I think you're going to be a very different individual, very different person. And it's going to be a different time, and I think the successes will come. All I can say is enjoy it, including the dips, because it's just going to make for an interesting book when you do it one day. Can you imagine doing a biography of your experiences so far? Come on, a book would be boring, wouldn't it, if you just progressed as a successful amateur, pro, UFC and champion. How boring. No, you've got your dips, your troughs, your injuries, your stories that attach to it all, and it's going to be an incredible thing when it's done and complete. But when it's done and complete, so will all your goals be.
Yeah, 100%. And I really appreciate you saying this thing.
Sorry, what was that?
Do you know what the book's going to be called? It's going to be called The Sword and the Dagger. There we go.
I don't know.
No, there's an image.
The wonky nose tails, the tails of the handsome. I like it. I don't know. the Baltic ballot or something. I don't know.
There's loads, mate. We'll think of some names, 100%. So, mate, just before we let you go, what I'd like to do is something called the one-word game. It's not really one word. Basically, I give you a list of names, and you just say the first thing which comes to mind when you hear that name. So, the one-word game with Modestas Bukauskas. Conor McGregor.
Confident.
Dana White.
Businessman.
Paddy the Baddie.
Eccentric.
Vadim Nemkov.
Technical.
Jack Shaw.
Animal.
Tyson Fury.
Greatest.
Canelo Alvarez.
Unstoppable.
And then finally, Jake Paul.
Moron.
That's a new one.
I like it. Modestas, it's been an absolute pleasure, my friend, as always. I hope it wasn't like a negative experience for you.
Do you know what? Honestly, I just want to obviously say I appreciate even just the conversation I had with you and also with Danny. You know, like as always being honest. Always saying the way he feels and stuff like that. And like I said, like I can't take anything away. We've learned so much together, and there's so much more to sort of learn together and stuff like that. But like I said, you've truly been an amazing influence in my life and my career and stuff like that. And I know you're going to continue to be as the years go on. And I'm really happy that we've had this chat and stuff like that. But I know that, you know, there's more to even be caught up on, if you know what I'm saying, which definitely I've got to come down and say hi for sure, because I feel that's long overdue. We definitely need to meet up and you know, have a meal at some point, just to really talk. Because like I say, you know, this has been, you know, for all of us, like, you know, now sort of revealing more of the story and stuff like that, which hasn't really necessarily been revealed before. And there's even more to it that hasn't even been mentioned, which, you know, obviously I'd like to have those sort of conversations with you and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm truly grateful for all you guys, like even giving me the exposure to even come and talk on your show and talk to you guys and you know, like I say, have a bit of a heart to heart and have a bit of a, you know, let your emotions flow a little bit, be honest, be real and stuff like that. So yeah, next time we're going to have a conversation on this show. I know it's going to be on a much more sort of, but I don't feel necessarily that this conversation was negative, because I feel it was very positive, because like, look how many things that I've said that I've learned, and the things that Danny has said and stuff like that. Collectively, there's so many good things that have come out of this, which is only going to help me in my career in the future, not only in my career, but in my life. So I can't wait. So there's definitely good times ahead. And this has really given me a massive boost mentally that I definitely feel I needed, especially, you know, having complications, you know, like I said, with the whole, you know, cyst situation and stuff like that. So I'm very grateful for you guys. Much love to both of you. I always enjoy talking to you. And like I said, I'm sure there'll be many more conversations in the future.
I've got some whiskey waiting. That's all I can say. Me and his dad, we love the whiskey.
Mate, you're going to need to bring at least 2 bottles, because one bottle will definitely be finished by my dad on his own.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we was all together when we was out in Vegas, every night we was out there, we polished off a bottle of whiskey, or we went on to something else, didn't we? We drank our 2 bottles of whiskey the first 2 days. We moved on to something. I can't remember what it was we bought now, but yeah,
it was like some
we ran through
thing. Yeah. No, those 2 are nutters. Like I'm sitting here preparing for a fight, and they're sitting here grabbing a bit of whiskey. Yeah, come on, Modestas.
Good times, man. Good times.
Funny.
I'm going to be going to Milton Keynes after Christmas, so hopefully, Mo, you can come down.
No doubt,
there, mate, and we'll have a catch up and stuff.
No doubt.
Food.
Sounds great.
But mate, as always, it's been a pleasure, and some phenomenal comments just about you generally and about the chat we've had. Rob Boyle, though, I'll leave you with this one, mate. He said, "I'd leave the light on for you." Top block, he says. There you go.
I appreciate that, mate.
So there's loads of nice comments. We should check them out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, cheers, my friend.
Onwards and upwards, buddy.
Yeah,
Indeed.
definitely. Much love to you guys. Yeah, thank you so much. Catch you guys
Cheers,
soon. Yeah.
mate. Cheers, buddy.
Nice one.
That was fascinating stuff, mate. Really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
It was. My screen's frozen. Hang on a minute. I got to bring Ben in now, and there we go. It's back. I thought I had connection issues on Friday's show. For some reason, my computer was just being weird, and I was like, it's been all right tonight. So I was just hoping it wasn't going to have the same issues. And there we go. It's Ben. Evening, Mr. Ben Doughty.
Right, Ben.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, guys. Good to see you again.
Good stuff. So we're forcing you to preview next week's fight. But before we do that, there was a particular story which caught my eye today from the world of boxing, which I found quite interesting. And it was from, I always forget his name, Lopez's, I don't know if it came up from his management team or from some sort of doctor, but it was reported by Combat Sports Media that he had some sort of breathing issue before the fight.
Yeah. Supposedly he had air trapped in his chest against the wall of his heart. And there was a lady doctor who had previously worked in the context of the New York State Athletic Commission as a ringside doctor. I don't think she was one on this occasion, but she's worked in that capacity before. And she said quite how he, it's a miracle he didn't die, was the way that she was presenting it, saying, that if he'd have been hit in the chest, he'd been taken out right out of the game and he would have needed a tube down his throat. And she says, how he fought, I'll never know. It was like someone had tied a 300-pound weight to his chest, or to his lungs or heart or whatever. So it sounds quite extreme, but to be honest with you, I posted it yesterday on my Facebook, and the reaction from most people on my page was stuff like, "Oh yeah, bullshit, accept the loss like a man." Which, the thing is, to me, it was on ESPN, which is a pretty credible news source, of course.
Yes.
And there was a doctor, a credible person saying it. So I don't know, but obviously from that, people were saying, well, if it is true, surely that's extreme negligence. And how was he allowed to fight in the first place?
Exactly that. That was going to be my question. Is how on earth could someone get through a medical and all, in top level combat sports these days, the UFC and then top level title fight boxing, these guys have all sorts of medicals and stuff to be able to get their licenses and fight in certain states and places. So if it is the case that he had this health issue, how would he have gotten through the necessary medical testing?
Like I say, God only knows, Simon. I mean, I think, the tests are pretty stringent, in the New York State, as in most. I mean, obviously, certain places in the United States, it's such a big place with a lot of different kind of boxing commissions across the states. There's no universal US governing body. You might think some anomalies might, occur. But certainly in New York or Vegas, you'd think they'd be incredibly stringent. I mean, I remember Philip Bowes getting pulled at the last minute due to some tiny irregularity in his medical. The British Boxing Board of Control wouldn't let him go ahead and fight the kid that's called Riddy Rival, like Akeem Ennis-Brown from Gloucester. And, they pulled the fight on the day, I think it was. I believe it was actually on the day of the fight. There was some pre-fight medical that they weren't happy with. So it's strange if it's true. I mean, I wouldn't seek to call Lopez a liar. I mean, he was ungracious in the aftermath of defeat, and he was unwilling. He was in denial about the fact that he had lost fair and square. Whether this is more kind of excuse making, and going to great lengths to make that excuse, I don't know. But I mean, let's take him. Let's look at it. In good faith. I think I'm glad he's okay. The other thing somebody said to me, well, surely he won't be allowed to box again then, right? But you know what I mean? I think people are trying to call his bluff, or, like he's crying wolf on this. Some people say, well, how will this affect him in the future? Is that a temporary condition? Honest to God, I'm not an expert, but it says he had air trapped in his chest, where air should not be. And it was a highly precarious situation in that ring. So if that's true, he's one lucky sod, isn't he? Because it was a hard fight, wasn't it?
God, yeah. Can you imagine? like a high-profile fight like that, if something had happened and he had got caught in the chest and then he had gone on to have serious complications, and then, of course, it was revealed afterwards, as it has been in the last couple of days, that it was a problem pre-fight. Can you imagine the legal shitstorm that would have followed?
Yeah.
And it's incredible stuff. But
I've just thought of a joke, actually. I'm a little bit late with the timing of this, but you know what? Even talking to you now, I've just instinctively feel that it's not true and he's full of hot air. No, sorry.
Jeez. Well. And for that, I'm glad that we forced you to preview Jake Paul's fight. Yeah. Look, it's one of those things, and I guess it'll remain to be seen, won't it, whether the people, if it's a bluff of some sort, or he's kind of making excuses, or if it'll cause him any long-term issues. Like I say, we're not doctors, so we don't know if it's a long-term issue. I would imagine, and this is a complete guess with no medical knowledge, that if he's got air trapped in there, they would want to release that air somehow, if it's possible. But as I say, we're not doctors, so I do not know if it's a possible thing to do. So I guess that'll remain to be seen, won't it? Because if now that it's been highlighted, they're going to look for that, I'd imagine, in the next fight or next medical he has for a fight.
Yeah, I think it needs to be stringent. He needs to be looked at, and like I say, taking it in good faith and not trying to be cynical. I'm glad Teofimo Lopez is okay, and I hope he's all right in the future. And I hope he's able to continue his career because he's an exciting young fighter with a lot left to give.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's the main thing, isn't it? Is that he was all right and that nothing did go wrong, and hopefully won't in the future. Reese said, Ben, how do the licenses work in the States? I remember reading that one state might reject a fight license, but then they just go to a different state and it's accepted with no issues.
That is true, particularly if someone happens to be obscure. I mean, obviously, when Mike Tyson, for instance, got a ban for, it was, I can't remember how long the ban was. I think it was, he got a suspension, however long it was, for biting Holyfield's ear in the rematch in 1997. Mm-hmm. And with something very high profile like Mike Tyson, and very high profile in the way that his offence was, it was something that is immediately honoured by tends to be honoured by other commissions. They tend to follow suit, and that is that. Although having said that, I remember when Tyson couldn't get that ban was honoured at the time, by the whole of the US. But do you remember when he couldn't get a license to fight in Las Vegas still? But they let him fight Lennox Lewis in Memphis.
Yes.
That's a case in point that sometimes they will. There's no organised control across the United States, unfortunately. And in the old days, in the pre-internet days, obviously some people had a field day boxing under assumed aliases, all over the place, getting knocked out in one state and crossing over the line and boxing the next night and all that kind of thing. Yeah, there is no universal control. So, and obviously the places where you see more of the exploitation on the kind of tank town circuit tend to be the more obscure places like Dakota or whatever. Obviously, there's usually quite a lot of eyes on you in New York or Las Vegas or California, and so on.
Of course, yeah. So tell us a little bit about there's some boxing last night. I am not up to date on the boxing from last night whatsoever.
Devin Haney retained. So this is a confusing bit, right, guys? George Kambosos pretty much won the World Lightweight Championship versus Teofimo Lopez last week, because Lopez was near as damn it undisputed champion. There is this tiny little grey area that. So what the WBC did was they declared, I think it was Lomachenko at first, before he lost to Lopez, they declared him the franchise champion. What they're doing, suppose you guys are both world-class fighters and Danny was just too dominant and there was nobody going to beat him. And I was thinking it's getting a bit, a bit dull. So I'm going to call Danny the franchise champion and you can be the regular champion, Simon. And then we can get some more money out of your sanctioning fees and title defences, yeah? And he fights when he fights and same thing. So what they did was they invented it's a bit like the WBA. They have a super champion and a regular champion, which is obviously nonsense. The WBC did a similar thing with what they called their franchise champion. I think their first franchise champion was Canelo Alvarez, and then they ran with the concept. Consequently, Devin Haney I mean, he's been declared world champion a couple of times by email. I think he's the only fighter in history to win a world championship twice via email. And on this occasion, he became the regular champ or the ordinary WBC champ, whatever you want to call it. So, but everybody knew that Lomachenko was WBC champ. Then he lost that to Lopez, who lost that to Kambosos. He also lost those other 3 belts, the IBF, WBA, and WBO to Kambosos. So now Kambosos has everything, including the all-important credibility, and they know he's the man because he beat the man. But Devin Haney is still masquerading as a world champion of sorts, and he retained that title last night against a tough Latin southpaw called Joseph Diaz. It was an impressive performance. That to me, Haney looks like Mayweather light. You know, if they did like a diet version of Floyd Mayweather, that's what he looks like to me. And he is a good fighter, and he's a young guy. He's got a lot to offer. He's got great hand speed, good arsenal, good offensive arsenal. I think he looked a little easy to hit sometimes, but by the southpaw last night. And I don't know if his chin is completely made of the finest oak, but he, I mean, he's. Really, if you want to put it in context, it was a world-class victory, and he's a contender for Kambosos' title. They're obviously on a collision course to fight for the really undisputed title. And Haney has said, "I'll fight you on Jupiter if I got to," because alluding to the fact that he may have to go to Australia to fight him. But Haney looks good, but I'm not convinced he's the. There's a lot, Gervonta Tank Davis is out tonight as well. He's fighting tonight. He's another big gun at lightweight. You've got lightweight might be the most exciting division right now when you've got Lopez, Kambosos, Lomachenko, Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, and Gervonta Tank Davis, and Haney, of course. So I think it's a very, very hot division. And to me, Haney is just one of those leading contenders, really. It annoys me when I see pictures on Instagram where someone says, and still not the champ, but that's all it is.
Yeah, it's some big names in that division for sure. It's going to be interesting how that develops into 2022. Excuse me, sorry. So we've got to that magical time, Ben, where you get to preview a Jake Paul fight. But before we do, we had a question earlier which I didn't get to, and it kind of fits in a little bit to what we've been talking about slightly with the different states and the rules and stuff. But do you know, and I'll put this to both of you, for Danny for MMA and Ben for boxing, do fighters have to declare if they are vaccinated at the moment? Ben, we'll start with you. So do boxers have to declare if they're vaccinated against COVID at the moment?
Do you know what? I don't know. That's an interesting question. I haven't seen, of all the endless to-in and throw-in and arguments online about COVID and anti-vax and pro-vax and conspiracy theorists and all the rest of it, and I've seen people complaining about travelling and this and that. I've not actually been aware of any boxing stories where a fighter has come out and said he's anti-vax and he's not going to, he's not able to take a certain opportunity because he refuses to have the jab, whatever. That's obviously a massive pun there waiting to happen. But, I haven't, I'm not sure whether they insist upon it. I suppose you would think that they do because boxing definitely during the pandemic, which is still ongoing, we had all those face masks and the cornermen wearing those kind of more like visors that people have, which is like, it's like face mask plus, isn't it? It's like not just a little face. This is serious, But obviously the trouble is fighters that walk into the ring with this face mask on sometimes. They be at the weigh-in anyway, not the ring, but they be at the weigh-in with it, eyeballing each other with the face masks on. But then they get in the ring obviously without it, like 30 odd hours later. So what's the bloody point? I mean, I think. But I don't know. It's a very long way of saying I don't know if you have to have the vax to fight, but I'd imagine a lot of them probably have had it because particularly when they have to travel. If you have to travel for your fight, then that's game set match, isn't it? Yeah.
What about you, Danny, from the MMA side? Do you know whether fighters have to declare it necessarily?
At the moment, it's not been mandated to have the vax, and indeed, even Dana White said that he's not going to force anyone to take the vax. But the issue that Ben said is the traveling aspect of it, so if you see it stateside, you're going to have to have it, in which case. But I mean, of course, that's just such a muddy topic, isn't it? It's been seen to split families, a bit like with the Brexit. it's like different subjects just seem to create such huge divide between the closest of friends, or what seem to be, and the most tight knit of families. What seem to be. It's just incredible what's happening. It really is.
Yeah, me and my wife have had some very interesting conversations about it. Because it's just one of those subjects, isn't it? Which kind of it's difficult, but like I would imagine, like you mentioned, for traveling, it's like it is where it is, isn't it? Like you want to travel for a fight, you've got to have it to get into certain countries. So it's kind of game, set, and match then, I suppose, unless you've got some sort of exemption for health reasons, I would guess. But even then, I think you might have an exemption. So if a fighter had an exemption from having a particular vaccination, they can have the exemption, but they can also be refused entry, particularly if you look at like the US or Australia, which is kind of like they're very strict at the moment, or even more strict than they normally are on allowing people to get visas and things like that. I guess they can still refuse it, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I remember when, without wishing to sidetrack, I remember when when it first became a thing, when the pandemic was very fresh and there was lots and lots of paranoia and just uncertainty and fear. Billy Joe Saunders, have you heard? He got some of his mates kicked off a plane. They were returning from America. He was staying out there. It was like he was preparing for Canelo or whatever. But I think in the end, the original date got pulled because of all the situation. But he just phoned up the airline saying, "Don't let Tom such and such on the plane. He's got coronavirus." And they took it really seriously and said, and these people were taken off the plane. They had to wait for another one, and they all had tests. He said, "Well, the good news is we haven't got coronavirus, but thanks, Billy Joe, you got us held up for another 24 hours." And
oh, wow.
I probably shouldn't be saying this because people took a very dim view of it because they people say he's so irresponsible, he's so immature, he's this, he's that. But it was funny because there was a voice note going around the boxing community, and it was Billy Joe just laughing his head off about what he'd managed to achieve with this prank, and other people saying that's disgusting. He's like a 14-year-old kid. But I thought it was funny.
Yeah, people are a bit too serious, I think. Craig says in the chat, you don't have to be double jabbed to travel to most countries. You just need a negative PCR test.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I don't know. I have no idea. But now we are at that time, and Mr. Ben Doughty is going to preview in detail Jake Paul and his upcoming fight versus the mighty Tommy Fury. It's going to be a fight for the ages, an all-time classic. How do you see it going, first and foremost, I guess, is the question, in terms of an actual fight?
Listen, Simon, if it's completely on the level, I would expect Tommy Fury to win because he has of two fairly, threadbare pedigrees, he has the deeper, better one. I mean, the thing with Jake Paul, who I did watch because you said I had to, and obviously it'd be a bit ridiculous to try and. I don't like people talking about things they don't know about, so I'd be guilty of that if I didn't watch him before doing this particular show with you, wouldn't I? So I've watched Jake Paul a bit, but also his record, the bare stats of his record state and prove that he's 4-0 against guys who'd never boxed before. They against guys who didn't have a boxing record, who were all making their debut. So he's boxed against 4 debutants who were perhaps coming from different worlds other than boxing, different subcultures and different combat sports and such. So he hasn't beaten a boxer as such, but he's 4-0. And I get that he's got a huge following in some kind of parallel universe where, I know young kids, these guys mean something to them. They like Jake Paul, they like Logan Paul, or they've at least they've heard of them and they've got an opinion of them. I mean, there's a kid, I've met a who's who of great fighters, from Britain and across the States. I train a kid who's about 12 who keeps saying to me, what was it like when I met KSI? And could I get him a message from KSI? Not Sugar Ray Leonard or Tyson Fury or Mike Tyson or like that, So, but yeah, so he's boxed. He's got a massive audience and he's made his money and all the rest of it, and he continues to make money. But I've watched him and he looks, honestly, objectively, without any kind of, hardcore kind of bias or snobbery, he looks to me like one of the better white-collar guys that I've trained in the past. He looks like you get one in a group and you'd be like, he's not bad, actually. He's quite strong. He's got half a clue what he's doing. Jake Paul isn't completely ignorant of the kind of whole dialogue that goes on in a boxing ring. He's defensively kind of semi-competent. He can put a few shots together. He looks reasonably, he looks reasonably, fit and conditioned. So Strong guy, no doubt. So, I mean, to me, he looks like a decent white-collar guy. The sort of one you'd be like, it's a shame, if you'd have taken up this when you were a bit younger, you might have been able to do amateurs. And you maybe could have gone somewhere, could have won the novices or something. Whereas Tommy Fury, he's had 12 amateur fights. We spoke about this last week, I think. And it turns out he's had 12 amateur fights. That's what they say. A little bit of footage that you found the other week.
Yeah.
But he himself even, I mean, a lot of his, if he didn't have the same father as Tyson Fury, and he hadn't been on. I mean, he's a good-looking guy with that kind of. Doesn't really have a fighter's physique, does he? He's got more of a Chippendale physique, Tommy Fury. But he's a popular guy. That he was on that Love Island where he kind of broke his name and put him on the map, really, independently of him being related to Tyson. And but other than that, I mean, I thought his early pro fights were a complete joke against some of the worst, most risible Latvian lemons I've ever seen in my life, to be honest. And I've seen a few. He boxed a decent-ish kid of 2-0 several months ago, I think back in the summer, ginger-haired fella who come to win and come to make his name. And that was a close-ish fight, but Fury won it on points. Then I watched his last fight, which was on the undercard, I believe, of either a Logan Paul or a Jake Paul fight.
Jake Paul and Woodley, I think, wasn't it?
That's it. It was on the undercard of Jake Paul and Woodley. And he boxed a guy that had one bout who looked like a celebrity boxer more than a credible pro. That black guy fought, Anthony Taylor, I think his name was.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
You know what? Fury did not look that great. I mean, I'm asking how good is Tommy Fury outside of all this? Obviously, there's a whole bunch of fighters from the real world who have beat him. He's listed as a light heavyweight, but he's weighed as much as 189 pounds in recent fights, which is closer to the old cruiserweight limit. Paul is listed as a cruiserweight. I still think Tommy Fury still looks the better of the two of them to me. But whether this is a real mismatch, we shouldn't exaggerate the class gap here, a la Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul or something like that. Yeah. I think the jury's still out on Tommy Fury, but he's in his 8th fight and he's getting. People say it's a multi-million-dollar purse, right? That's what they say.
Oh, yeah.
So you know what? When you slog your guts out and have to sell tickets just to wind up with a few measly £100 on the low, on the bottom rung of the pro game, you can see why someone would say, "Listen, good luck to him if you can get that kind of money because of your birthright and because of your reality TV kind of trajectory and whatnot, then go take it." I guess that's what you're going to do, isn't it? But so I mean, I would expect Fury to win, but the trouble with these things is whenever you see them, it looks like there's some sort of arrangement in the mix.
It did,
and that's what I want to establish. Would Tommy Fury really come out and destroy him if he can? He's threatening to do that. Would he do that and say, "Listen, I don't care. I don't give a toss for any niceties or your reputation or the sense that you're not a real boxer"? Will he just walk through him? Because listen, when Floyd Mayweather fought Conor McGregor, never mind Logan Paul, some people were hoping he would just go through McGregor like a hot knife through butter. People were saying boxing has been good to Floyd, and it would be nice if he struck this blow for us. For those of us who consider ourselves in that guild, the boxing family. But he won't do it, you know what I mean? And he didn't do it. And the thing is, to be honest with you, I don't think he carried McGregor as such. I just think that's a big, tough, elite combat athlete from another sport who was capable of hanging around for quite a while with Floyd, even though that particular version of Floyd at that age, without ever looking like he was going to win. I don't think he held him up, actually, for round after round. But the thing is, some people think he did do that, and it's certainly not beyond Floyd's capabilities to do that. It's the sort of thing he might do.
Did he do that against Logan Paul?
Go on.
I was just going to say, do you think he did that against Logan Paul? Because there was that clip we looked at a couple of weeks back, wasn't it, where it does look like he caught Logan Paul. Logan Paul sort of slumps a little bit onto Floyd, and there was people kind of saying that he knocked him out and it wasn't planned or whatever you say, so that's why he held him up and didn't. It's, like you said, I guess it's not beyond the realms of possibility. I suppose is the thing, isn't it?
I think he definitely held Logan Paul up, because how badly and how woefully would he have had to have slipped in order for him to struggle with the guy and go however many rounds they went. Was it 8 rounds? I think. Yeah. I mean, he'd have to have slipped an awful lot, wouldn't he? You can entertain the idea that it would take him 9 or 10 rounds to catch up with Conor McGregor, even though he's vastly superior in the art of the sweet science. It could still take a long time, because that's a much bigger guy who can take an elite beating, in a different context. So who knows? But that's what I want to know, Simon, really. Is Tommy Fury coming to make a statement, and does he want to smash the guy to pieces? Or are they going to have this slightly strange looking affair that's going to go the distance, and there's going to be a bit of controversy and you know what I mean?
Yeah, like to me, if I was forced to put a bet on it, my bet would involve some sort of decision.
Yeah.
And I think either way it'll go to a decision, because rightly or wrongly, I don't trust that Tommy, even though it seems like John Fury and Tyson Fury want Tommy Fury, from at least from the outside, they want him to go in there, run through Jake Paul and make a point.
Yeah.
I can't shake the feeling, especially because there's been loose allegations that in Jake Paul's previous fights, there's been a bonus for the fighters if they don't kind of knock him out and stuff like that, or certainly in the Tyrone Woodley one. I don't see how that's possible, because this is a professional bout, isn't it? It's not a celebrity, like a charity.
No, it's registered.
It's not an amateur. It's a legitimate professional bout. So I would have thought that sort of clause can't possibly be in the contract, can it?
Well, you say that, but that goes on all over the place in professional boxing across the world. Certainly in the UK, people know that journeymen are not trying to win for the most part. You know, because it's not their business, it's not their function to win, and it's not what gets them paid. Because if they can't sell a ticket, or you don't want to, if you choose not to sell tickets, then even if you win, and it's going to be hard to get a decision, you're going to have to win really well to get the decision off a referee usually. Even if you do win, all it means is, or if you knock the guy out, it just means the promoter doesn't want to use you again, because they don't want to risk their ticket seller against you, because they're trying to build the kid that can make them money and does sell the tickets. So he's paying you. You know what I mean? You pay when you turn pro on the bottom rung in this country, you have to sell enough tickets to pay your purse, your opponent's purse, and put some back into the pot as well. Maybe £500 back to promoter, your purse of about £1,000 thereabouts, and your opponent's purse about the same, you know. So really, essentially, most journeymen are fighting their boss, their employer for the night, you know, the person who's giving them the money. Now, they win sometimes, you know what I mean? So very rare is it that you're actually told you can't win if you're a journeyman or a trainer of a journeyman. But I've had it once when basically a promoter gave my fighter at the time about before Christmas, because he needed money. Odd, because he was a Muslim and didn't celebrate Christmas. But I remember it was before Christmas, and he said he needed money. And he said what he had a cruiserweight turning over. It was his first bout, with Popular Lad from Canning Town, And he had a small guy, a guy called Elvis Jube, who was like a cruiserweight, light heavyweight size journeyman, short guy, who was supposed to fight him. And what he said was, he had another fight for Elvis Jube, maybe. So he said, maybe if I give Elvis Jube that fight, I'll give you. My guy's a massive heavyweight, fucking absolute, like a steroid machine on legs. And he said, I'll give you this fight instead, but you have to go easy. You've got to promise me. And he was saying to me, Ben, I'm really worried about this, because the other guy's family was supposed to be a bit naughty, a bit of a face from Canning Town, I don't know, all that rubbish. So he said to me, I'm really worried about this, Ben. He said, he's so bad, your guy could stop him with a body shot by accident. He said, you must promise me you will hold it back. You have to go careful. And he was really worried about it.
The plot of Snatch, this does, Ben.
Yeah, honestly, honest to God, this happened. I mean, I'm not mentioning names, but, because I think that'd be a bit too much. But this is mainstream professional boxing in the UK at your call. So obviously we had the fight and he went easy on the guy. The debutant got his win. But it's funny because there's an old guy called Terry Stewart, who's an old trainer, a wise old sage who works with Jim McDonnell, who's trained many champions like James DeGale and Danny Williams and such. And he smirked at me during their last round, because you'd see how pacifistic my guy was being. And he smiled at me and said, and the funny thing is, Ben, some of these other kids think they're good, But so that's what I'm saying to you. That is how hooky it can be and how blatant it can be.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying all boxing's fixed. It isn't. When you watch a fight like Kambosos versus Lopez the other week, to take a recent case in point, they're both giving it everything they fucking got to get that win.
Yeah.
It's team against team, fighter against fighter, no quarter still given. But all I'm saying is, to build up to that elite situation, there's a lot of arrangements of skullduggery that forms the rungs to that ladder.
Okay. So what did you make of John Fury, particularly John Fury, but the kind of virtual press conference-y type thing that they did? What did you make of that? Because I thought it was, I don't know what I thought, to be honest with you. It was almost comical in more than it didn't make me want to buy the fight and more than
No.
I don't already. I just found it, I don't know why. I wasn't offended. I was just
think it's embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch it, but I heard you see stuff. People talk about things online in your loop, in your kind of peer group of people online. And I saw people saying this was just embarrassing. Talk about the total lack of class, and it's juvenile, it's tawdry. And I just think with John Fury, unfortunately, I mean, obviously John Fury's become a celebrity, hasn't he, in this era because he's Tyson Fury's dad, and the whole story about him being premature, and he gave him the nickname. He gave him not the nickname, the name Tyson, and all the rest of it. As a symbol for triumph over adversity, and it's. So some people think John Fury's a guru, whereas I don't think so, really. I've nothing against the fella, but at the end of the day, he was a professional fighter himself. He got absolutely mullered by Henry Akinwande. He likes to caveat that by saying, if I'd have fought Henry in a field, I'd have killed him. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't take place in a field. And you know what? You probably wouldn't have done it. He'd have probably done you in the field too, as long as it was on a level playing field and he didn't get absolutely caved in afterwards by whatever mob you had with you at the field. Then Henry Akinwande would probably take you without the gloves on too. That's my feeling. But no, what I mean? I think it's a shame in a way but this is what people buy into, and it's all happened in this generation. It's happened in the last maybe 15 years. You got IFL and that kind of phenomenon, IFL TV. I mean, I remember seeing Kugan Cassius when he was first starting out, and fair play to the man. He had vision. He knew where he was going with it, because people didn't. It was still just the broadsheets, that were at these things. Not many TV, not many camera, not many video interviews. Then you saw these two guys, Kugan Cassius and James Helder, going around with a camera, and you thought, what are they doing? What's that all about? And they had Jane Couch, the former female trailblazing pro fighter in this country, with them. And and at the time, it was like, what they're doing, that's a bit quaint. Whereas now everybody does it, don't they? They've spawned 1,000 imitators, and that's where it's at. And I think they realised, maybe they didn't realise quite to an extent, perhaps they were shooting in the dark and got lucky, but soon they realised that there was massive commercial trajectory in the beef thing, and people like Derek Chisora flipping tables, and they helped to encourage that, because they fed off both sides of the industry, fed off each other, and Eddie Hearn as well. When he was just coming up at that same time, him and Kugan formed a bit of a double act, and it worked out for everybody involved. But what we've got as a result is we've got this more lowbrow kind of culture where you get people like John Fury being given a voice maybe too often and saying the kind of things he does. And I suppose some people would accuse me of hypocrisy, because they'd say, what about your mate Billy Joe Saunders? But all I could say about Billy Joe is I've never done a silly interview with Billy Joe, and I've done loads. It's always been sensible and respectful. He gets someone else in front of him and he starts, like Michelle Joy Phelps, and he starts talking rubbish, because I think it's just because I think he sees me as someone he knows from the gym, and somebody, he sees me as a boxing man, and he knows I don't want all that rubbish about how, you're gonna bend someone's mum over and sodomize her if they're not careful. I think he knows I don't expect that to hear that,
Yeah, and I guess, as you say, because you know him, it makes it a different, different relationship, isn't it, and a different dynamic. Yeah, absolutely. Couple of questions for you, Ben, before we let you go. Reese says, Ben, what's your opinion on the fact that they found that the Olympic boxing might have been rigged for the past few events? They investigated after several suspicious results.
Yeah, once again, that wouldn't surprise me. The amateur game is much straighter than the professional game, and the things I've described to you a little earlier, but you still get that bias in terms of decisions, and it happens at the lowest level. Like club show. If you're a schoolboy boxer boxing in the UK, you'll often say, well, it was on their show, so he won it on a majority. But when on our show, I won it, because that's the way it works. You've often got more of your judges or judges with closer connections to your club on your home show than you have on an away show. Obviously, you can intensify that bias when you get to the national level, right? I mean, Michael Condon was the one with him when he made that legendary speech in 2016, when he said, and he was, foul-mouthed about it, and he said he didn't care that it was live on BBC or anything like that. He just said, this is all rotten, this game, from the core to the top. And he was shafted really, really cynically in that fight. And you see it a lot. The worst one ever. Like I say, it's not just this Olympics. I don't know if people remember Roy Jones when he lost in the Olympic final in Seoul, South Korea in 1988. He literally beat the Korean fighter from pillar to post. I don't know if he even got hit. Literally, and you watch it. You make me watch Jake Paul. Let me make you watch something. Just next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Watch. It's only 3 rounds. Roy Jones versus Park Si-hun, 1988 Olympic final. He doesn't touch him, and Roy absolutely paints. It's a paint job. But they gave it to the other guy, right? They gave it, so it's nothing new, that kind of bias. And, Anthony Joshua, personally, I believe and I've told him this more or less, I think he got beat out of sight in his first fight in the Olympics by the Cuban whose name was Savon. I thought he got beat out of sight, but at the end of the day, he got the decision, and then he grew into that tournament, and he ended up winning the gold medal. Some people think he was a little lucky against the Italian Camarà in the final, but I think that was a close fight, and I think it's fair enough that AJ won that. But he lost in the first series, no question. He just lost that fight. So, obviously, where there's national bias and money, with Joshua, it wasn't just national bias, and it was a London Olympics, although that was a big factor. It was also the fact, I believe, that there was a lot of money involved in him winning that Olympic gold medal, and the platform and the catapult it was going to give him for his pro career, and you know the rest. So
yes.
That doesn't surprise me.
Interesting. They obviously in Anthony Joshua's case, like you sort of mentioned there, they had big plans for him post Olympics. So I think it would have taken a lot, I think, for him to be losing any of those fights on points, or any close fights at least.
You know what Barry Hearn said to me when I said he got beat out of sight in his first fight. And Barry Hearn said, yeah, but you know what the book says? He says, you mustn't be a traditionalist anorak. And thank God for it, because he's going to be one of the greatest fighters this country's ever produced. So he basically said, never mind about that. Don't be a traditionalist anorak, i.e., someone who wants to score the fights honest, call it like you see it. He said, never mind that. It's fantastic that happened, because now look at what he's doing, and it's all going to be great. And that is why he also said to me that week, we did an interview on a show called Tip TV back in the day. He was talking about Canelo Alvarez, who'd just beaten Erislandy Lara at the time in 2014. And it was a very controversial decision. To this day, most people will tell you that Canelo lost that fight to Erislandy Lara. But Barry said, but Canelo, Alvarez is the bigger commercial animal, isn't he? And he said, I'm not saying it's crooked. I'm just saying there's a tendency to veer towards the bigger commercial animal. And that is the name of the game. And it can even affect the amateurs. Yeah.
Incredible. It's like, I get that there's money involved. I do. And maybe I'm being naive, but I just want to see fights scored as they are. And if that means that, you get a shock more often than perhaps is what is on paper and the results that we get, then so be it. I want to see that. I want it to be legitimate. Yeah. I don't want it to be, I don't know what the word is, but
crooked.
Yeah, it's the best. That's the only word, I guess, isn't it, to say? Yeah. But yeah, it is what it is, I guess. So I've got that fight up ready to watch. I'll be sure to watch that. Ben, are you still joining me tomorrow evening for that My Story Extra for a little short live?
Yeah, we can do that. What time do you want to do it?
7 o'clock, if that's okay.
Sounds good to me.
Excellent. So I'll see you. Ben will be back with me tomorrow, 7 o'clock, for My Story Extra live. If you haven't already, make sure when we finish up here tonight, you watch Ben's episode of My Story, which came out last Wednesday. And this Wednesday, we have the mighty Danny Batten joining us. But Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you as always. I'll speak to you tomorrow. And
just before we go, Ben, was you in Toaster recently? Was you in Toaster? I saw, was it on your Facebook? You was drinking an alcohol-free Guinness. Was it Toaster? Yeah, because that's literally just down the road from our gym.
Leicester.
Oh, was it Leicester? That's right. Yeah. I knew it was kind of localish. If you ever sort of round that way and you got time to nip in to see the gym, it'd be great to meet you in person.
Yeah,
is that show you around that gaff. Yeah, it's not crazy far. Yeah, it's not crazy far,
okay.
Northampton.
I'll give you a shout, because I might be there again, imminently, because the thing that I was doing was a boxing related thing, and I might be back. So yeah.
Yeah, no problem. And to put you under added pressure, I'm getting your book for Christmas. And do you sign them, or would you not do that?
Yeah, I sign them all the time.
That's fine. Yeah. There you go. I made it so he couldn't say no by asking him on here.
If you want, what I could do is Let me see, because I don't know if you've already made plans to get it, but I've got a few copies. I could send one if
Right.
you inbox me an address and I could send it, couldn't I? Do you know what I mean? Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah. We could do. I have to ask whether, because I put it on my Christmas list, so I have to ask around, make sure no one's ordered it already. But however,
Okay,
which way?
Hang fire, but if they haven't, then let me know.
Yeah, no worries, Ben.
No worries. All right,
Top
boys.
man. Cheers, Ben.
Yeah, cheers.
See you tomorrow.
Ben Doughty as ever, legend, always enjoyable.
Yeah, he's written quite a few books, hasn't he? I didn't realise he had. Yeah.
Do you know what I'd advise, mate? I'd advise before you read his books, I would listen to the episode of My Story which we did last week, because that's a really good kind of precursor to that. Obviously, the book goes into a lot more detail because we were fairly limited in terms of time, but he's got 3 books, it's like a loose sort of life story, the first 2, and then his third most recent one's called Throwing in the Towel, and they're a really good read, mate. The last one in particular is really, really good. Highly recommended. But yeah, his My Story, much like yours, mate, was very, very interesting.
Sure.
For different reasons, but that's why I enjoy doing that series, because everyone's got a story to tell. Everyone's got memories and stuff. I'm looking forward to people hearing yours on Wednesday, mate. It's going to be really interesting, because obviously you've had a very interesting life. Right, mate. Sum up last night's UFC for me in about 8 minutes.
Yeah, let's just get the names out. Should we start from the top, so to speak? We'll start off with Rob
You go
Font,
whichever way you want. I'm going to leave this
Font and Aldo,
because we're stuck for time.
Font clearly had a game plan to just chuck a lot at Aldo and try and push the pace on him. I think sometimes we've seen Aldo get a little bit gassed. He's quite highly muscled at that weight division, as he was even a weight division above. And Font's definitely had game plan. It was all looking good. He just stopped Jose Aldo from setting any kind of pace, any kind of timing, looking great. But the defining difference was that Aldo clearly had power advantage, because when he was landing on Font, it was largely consequential to Font's form. In fact, knocking him off his feet. They did briefly hit to the ground. Font in the second round, and as the rounds went by, become more less effective. And Aldo was becoming more effective. In fact, we saw more of Aldo on the ground than we probably ever have in the whole of his career. We saw more of him on the ground in this fight. And, he looked good. He was really shutting down Font. Really, really impressed with what Aldo was doing. He was already at legendary status. He really was. But my goodness, he's just fermenting that with that kind of performance. I think a lot of people could have easily written him off with against Font, because Font's really, shone in recent fights. Difficult fight for anybody. But Aldo was absolutely fantastic. And he keeps on winning. What could you say for the guy? He's obviously very, very serious about this sport and wants to get to that,
do you know what,
mate? That contendership of a title again.
I think more people would be raving about his performance, and people are raving about it last night. More people would be talking about it in glowing terms if it wasn't for the fact of what Clay Guido did.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
That was just special, but and the age and everything about it. But I think that's almost taken a little bit of shine away from Jose Aldo. In the media and social media, in terms of, I realize, as for people like myself and you watching in detail, it was a special performance. Yeah. But go on, sorry to interrupt you, mate.
And then we had that. You're saying about butchering names. Fiziev, I think I'm pronouncing that right. Rafael Fiziev versus Riddell. Really great fight. I mean, God, I had the volume up on this one. The sound of their strikes, so both throwing down at the same time. When one person was throwing, the other was throwing. Punches, kicks, and they were slapping in. I'm not surprised that there was a massive gash appear on Riddell's eyebrow. Did you see it? Really deep gash on the eyebrow.
Nasty.
Very, very nasty. But Fiziev looks so relaxed in there. He looks so relaxed. And trust me, he's getting heat put on him by Riddell. They were both giving as good as each other were getting. But Fiziev, it's just his composure in there was the defining difference. And what a way to score a knockout. He did a spinning heel kick, knocked onto the side of Riddell's head, And it was a weird old knockout, but a great referee stoppage. I think it was the absolute right thing to do. It wasn't even contested by Riddell, but what a brilliant performance from Rafael Fiziev. Really amazing. I'm totally impressed with him. Kind of excited about how he's going to be performing in these next future bouts, because he'll be moving up the ranks for sure. Good one. If anyone wants to watch an impressive striking performance between two athletes, that's the one to watch right now.
Yeah, it was very, very good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very, very good. And then as we go down, we had Jimmy Crute versus Jamal Hill.
Very quickly, we talked about Jimmy Crute earlier. He was exceptionally impressive against Modestas, and we talked with Mo about how maybe it was a fight a little bit too soon for him, but he's lost 2 on the bounce now.
Yeah, and that's the nature of UFC. You're right up on the top tier level. If you don't get everything balancing in the right order at the right time, things can go wrong, and they've been going wrong for Crute lately. I think he would be utterly disappointed with the performance. I think he just tried to strike too many times. He was looking for high kicks against Jamal Hill, which is kind of surprising because he's giving away a little bit of height. Yeah. And of course, to do that, you have to adjust your balance and lean somewhat and centralize your head. He goes and gets himself clobbered. Jamal Hill, he just looks so powerful and so precise. And Crute was kind of just like, I don't know, not intense enough with his head position and footwork. I feel like he was just chucking out combinations like he was hitting pads or hitting a bag. And I think that was his undoing. I think he should have felt it out a little bit more and maybe come with a proper game plan. I felt like he went in there and just fought and didn't game plan very much. Back to drawing board for Crute. Crute's definitely got to try to make game plan for the next fight, because losing 3 in a row, as we've seen with Modestas, could mean you're out of UFC. So he's got pressure on him now.
Mate.
Yeah, it would be incredible, because we were touting Crute as being top 5 material before his top 5. I mean, that's how impressive his run of victories had been. But struggling right now. A couple of quick losses on his resume, but I've got faith that he can put it back round, and it just takes a little bit better game planning. And I think that's just where it all went wrong. I felt like he didn't really have a strategy. Just went in there throwing punches and kicks. Didn't really go about anything that I feel that he was doing as a game plan to beat Hill. Although really it was too short-lived a fight to probably get into seeing any game plan that might have ensued if it continued. But Jimmy Crute couldn't be happy with that performance, and I can't disappoint you for him, because I like Crute, fan of Crute. But I think he'll pull through on the next one around. I think he'll be more careful. I want to see him shoot in a little bit more. I think his ground is very, very solid. I just think he's had some wins on the feet, and he's kind of relying on that. I don't think he should. I think he should use his striking to perhaps draw someone back onto him to meet him in the pocket and then perhaps shoot underneath. He's got pretty good takedowns. He's definitely got very, very good grappling. I'd like to see him rely on that a little bit more and only use the striking when needed to.
Interesting stuff, mate. And then what was that? What was the next one?
Clay Guida versus Leonardo Santos. And Leonardo Santos, I mean, wow. I thought Clay Guida was
grappler, mate, by the way.
Santos yeah. Well, he's striking. He looked like a striking specialist, didn't he, when he went up against Clay Guida? Look, Clay Guida, not only is he, kind of probably past his prime physically, no one will probably argue with that, but he's largely fighting out of his weight division as well, I would suggest. He's always given away an incredible increment of height and general build, but he's still an absolute jive bunny full of energy. And I think that was his saving grace in that first round, the fact that he is just such a tough guy and so full of cardio, even at his twilight years as a sort of like an elite athlete in combat sport. But look, Santos completely spunked his load. He really, really did, because after that onslaught that he put against Clay Guida, after that, he just looked like he was on the decline rapidly. He just didn't recover, even when they reached the end of the round, which was Clay Guida being on top. When they got to the end of the round and they started that round 2, he just lost his pep. He just lost it. And Clay Guida did the right thing, trying to take it to the ground, and just overwhelmed him and gets the short rear naked choke. Great. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Clay Guida. I do worry he will stay in too long, but
what did you make of the finish, though, mate? I thought that was really. I just thought it was just like
It was great. Yeah.
It's special. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know how better to describe it.
Yeah, it was great. Santos was kind of like half done anyway, I think. He was wringing the neck of an opponent that was no longer physically able to defend as he knew he should defend. I just think he was literally just so exhausted. And like I say, Clay Guida's, he's full of energy. So, he got into this optimum position and just had so much fight to finish. Santos had lost that fight to finish, trying to finish the fight in that previous round, unfortunately for him. Great win. I even thought Clay Guida won his previous fight. I was kind of disappointed the decision had gone against him because he fought not long ago, did he?
I remember you said,
and
weeks back.
So in my mind, he's kind of on a 2-fight winning streak. If you sort of like want to look at it in the ways that I'm looking at it, and look, he's proven he's still absolutely relevant in there. But my goodness, I wonder what he would do at featherweight if he was to fight there, where I think he belongs. But look, he might be choosing to do lightweight because you don't have to cut weight. He's probably walking around close to the weight. It's not a big issue for him. It's just comfortable for him. And maybe because he is at that older age, it enables him to save that energy that you would typically lose by doing a hard weight cut. So there might be a plan and a reasoning that he's fighting up at the weight that he's fighting at. But look, he's getting wins. He's still in there. And I love watching him every time. And I just think he did show some vulnerabilities in there. And I worry that he's going to stay in too long. I don't know what his intention. What would be interesting is to hear an interview of what his intentions are. Is he really wanting to make a run for the belt, or is he in there as a gatekeeper? Is he just trying to financially cap and secure his life? I don't know what the reasons are that he's in there, or is he just doing it for the pure love? But for whatever the reasons are, I just hope he don't stay in there too long. I would hate to see him do that because I'm such a big fan of him, like I say, and I want to see him fight on because I've enjoyed watching his fighting style and his personality in there. But yeah, I just don't want nothing bad to happen to him by hanging around in a sport that's forever getting younger, it seems.
Yeah, I feel like he's doing it for the love of the game, mate. I got to be honest.
It seems it. It seems it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. And then just to finish us off this evening, support for the Danny Batten Fight Show brought to you by Manscaped.com, who are the best in men's below the waist grooming. They are the champions of the world, in fact. Manscaped offers precision engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0, modeled by myself here, all across Europe. You heard that right. That's the 4.0. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer. You can use the code Fight Show, not Fight Club, Fight Show, and you get 20% off, free worldwide shipping, which is an incredible offer in itself. It's time to kill 2 birds with 1 trimmer and get yourself and your lady a gift. I am talking about the Manscaped Performance Package. And of course, it's Christmas coming up now, and Manscaped has got some incredible deals for you, including the hygiene bundle, which comes with a pair of Manscaped anti-chafing boxer shorts that is perfect for wrapping your presents. The Manscaped Performance Packages comes with all the tools to clean up delicate places, including the Weed Whacker, which is the ear and nose trimmer. It's waterproof, comes with a 9,000 RPM motor, 360-degree rotary blade system. Nobody, not even Santa, wants hairs coming from the chimney. They're going beyond the groin with their new refined cologne as well. So there's obviously so much stuff which you can get there, men and women. All ingredients are hypoallergenic. They're vegan, cruelty-free, dye-free, paraben-free. What are you waiting for? 'Tis the season to load up on Manscaped products. So get yourself, your dad, your brother, your wife, your mother. Get the best gift of all, the Manscaped Performance Package. Get 20% off by using the code FIGHTSHOW at manscaped.com. And of course, we thank them for supporting the show as ever. Danny Batten, what a show, mate. That has been emotional.
Yeah.
Emotional.
No, it was good. It was good. I was looking forward to it. I didn't know how it was going to go down, but I think it went as good as anyone could have imagined. I heard some positive things.
There loads of nice comments. There was one comment. It came in when Ben was talking, so I didn't put it up on the screen. Trying to find where it was. There it is. So Gaz Cubbins says that interview with Modestas was some of the best interviews I've ever seen. So
nice. Thanks,
take
Gaz.
great pride in that. And I might even, because I know Mo was looking forward to kind of getting some stuff off his chest and having a chat, and he hasn't talked in detail about his injury with anyone else, so I appreciate obviously him doing that with us. But also, I might release the bulk of the chat with Mo as a clip. But I don't know. I'll see how I do, because obviously that means more work for me. But there we go. Danny Batten, as ever, it's a pleasure, my friend. A bit of a longer one, but for the best reasons going. Nearly 2 hours today. As ever, it's a pleasure to have you alongside me. Please, guys, do check out Danny Batten on My Story, Wednesday, 8 p.m, as the man himself tells his story from the beginning. So that's going to be very interesting for people. I know how good it is because I was there. See you then. I'll be in the live chat on Wednesday as well if people want to join along and have a chat. But I'll be back tomorrow with Ben to discuss his My Story and answer your questions, of course, as well. So make sure you've watched it. You'll find that on the YouTube channel or Apple and Spotify, all that good stuff. Until then, I bid you a farewell. Thank you very much. Have a great week, Daniel.
Yeah, and you, sir. Cheers, buddy.